Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be continuing our Millennia Dev Diary rundowns. Today we have both of the December developer diaries. One is going to be on the ages mechanic and the other one is going to be on the domain and cultures mechanics. And so we're going to be, taking a look through these, reading through. Most of this is going to be, there aren't too many images for these ones. And so, if you wanted to put on a game and just put this on in a background and think of it as a podcast, you can do that. But we're going to be reading through this and kind of reacting to it and giving some thoughts on it. So, hope you guys enjoy. Hello, Ben. Ben Friedman, a game designer at C Prompt Games, which is the developing studio that's operating underneath Paradox, or Paradox is the publisher. These guys are the developers, although that is a nuance that's somewhat lost on me. And I have the pleasure of presenting the Dev Diary for Millennia. We've had some of you hanging around our allusions to the various ages in the game. Now it's time to go into detail on this. There are going to be 10 ages. Something that's always been at the core of Millennia has been the ability to explore each era of human history and let the player toy around with what might have been if you were there. People get really excited talking about what if moments, and this is kind of the critical thing to perhaps emphasize is what if deviations are something they're trying to set up. Moments in history, in our vision, lets you play through these possibilities. To do that, Millennia features a range of historical and alternative history ages that create a sandbox for history. From there, you can do etc. What if Rome never fell? What if steam power was viable? It was viable. You mean earlier? Okay, fair. What if AI becomes sentient? When AI becomes sentient? To put it together, we wanted to make a whiteboard scribbling the most common, interesting what-ifs we could think of, coming at it from what we thought would be the coolest and also what we thought would be fun to play with. And so they came up with this idea of ages. So ages, broadly. The timeline in Millennia is separated into 10 distinct ages. Each age houses a handful of texts that unlock units, buildings, etc. Unlocking age will progress you through history and potentially expose you to what-if alternative history timelines. The historical ages have technologies you'll recognize, and alternate history ages have new texts that are unique to the age. So this is perhaps something that's really interesting to hone in on. The tech tree is going to be different depending on what age you're going to be going in, and so this is going to be interesting. What if steam power was viable age has floating airships, steampunk machines, and more, just to give you a taste. And so if you wanted to go steampunk, there's perhaps an opportunity to do it. In order to progress from one age to the next, you'll have to research a minimum number of texts from your current age and meet any additional requirements the next age might have, then research the next age if you want to advance into. Other players can see your progress on the age and advanced research you start and are alerted towards whatever age research is closest to being completed. This is going to be key because whoever researches the age first decides what the age will be. This gives you a chance to see if someone else is doing and race ahead to beat them to the age you prefer. By progressing to the non-mainline age, you diverge the game away from the historical known timeline and into an alternate history scenario. So there's going to be 10 vanilla ages, as it were, and then alt history ages. We've chosen cutoff points in the timeline to break up our ages that work both historically and are suited for alt history. For example, if you choose to go into an age like what if Rome never fell, it picks up right about when Rome was in decline, and an age like what if steam power was viable is right at home in the Victorian period. So you kind of continue on getting steam power, I guess, without digital power or other technology, something like this, and so it's going to be a little bit different. Due to all the permutations, every game you're going to play is going to be different because of what ages you link together. So it's going to be different technology, different units, like all this sort of different stuff, presumably, and so this is going to be an interesting one for replayability, right? But what if the ages are hyper meta and you always go with one age? It'll be interesting to see. The thing that's really striking to me is that whoever advances into the age first is the one that picks it. We're going to get to that in just a second, so let's continue going. These alternate history ages take the place of historical ages and mean that sometimes you'll miss out on something important in the main timeline in order to get something else unique from your alt history age. So there's an opportunity cost. It's not like in Civ you just get all the text eventually, right? In this, it seems to be the case that you might not get all the text eventually, and so there might be trade-offs in this sort of thing depending on age. This variation leads to some wild games, and the system accounts for that by requiring you to return to the next historical age after returning into an alternate history branch. So, requiring that you return to the next historical age after adventuring into an alternate history branch. So, to me, this implies you can't have two alternate history ones in a row. That way, you're always in a known position when we present the next what if question, and we know that you have the tools to rise to whatever challenge, etc. Okay, and you can see here, this is the Age of Bronze, which I'm guessing is one of the vanilla ones, and we have all of these, like, sea building. I think these are going to be the various things, texts and such that you can gain access to. It's got a bunch of subdivisions, and there's age to the left and age to the right. Maybe that's what this means. I'm not entirely sure. These ages are linked together in a timeline, so I'm guessing that's what this little white arrow is, just linking one age to the Bronze Age. And this future age is what we would be considering, except we can't see the full picture. When you research an age, you get a suite of units, buildings, improvements, and more just like any other tech. Seems like it was not like just like any other tech, but okay. By researching the Age of Blood, for example, you gain access to the Berserker unit that's ready to lay waste to the enemies, which you'll have a lot of in the Age of Blood. So I guess it forces war or something like this. If you're the first person, and I'm guessing this in alternate history, if you're the first person to enter an age, you also lock the age for the timeline. I think this is perhaps the most striking thing, and this does leave me a little bit concerned because, okay, this is probably good for a balance for, like, multiplayer, which is maybe the context in which the game is supposed to be played. But if you're playing in single player, what this suggests to me is it's going to be very likely that you either are going to get to pick all the ages or you're going to get to pick none of the ages, depending on how they balance the AI and if they give AI a bunch of bonuses and this type of stuff. Or the AI will pick the first 5 ages and you'll pick the next 5, something like this, if they start off with a really strong start. And that's not necessarily a play pattern. That's a play pattern that leaves me a little bit concerned, but I mean, it remains to be seen how it's balanced out. However, if you're just playing multiplayer, this probably... Anytime you can exchange one resource for another, this is a very interesting thing. You know, the more genuine decision points that are created by this, not just complexity for the sake of complexity, the more interesting gameplay is. And so if you have a multiplayer game where you're sacrificing a whole bunch in order to force a particular age that is well suited towards how you've developed your country, this is an interesting thing. But let's continue. All of the players will have to progress through the same ages once the timeline is locked in. This makes leading nation an important role to maintain as you choose which technologies are available in your game. So we see here, we see this belief, community, discipline, officials, mining, and shipbuilding. This is part of the Age of Bronze. If this was the Age of Blood, it might be like chaos, disorder, blood, more blood, the third pint of blood, all the blood, or something, you know, in the categories of what techs are available, or something like this. And so this is an interesting thing. Each age also has an age of rules that are enforced globally as long as that age is the leading age. So this is going to affect the globe. Entering a new age will replace the old age rules from the previous age. So this way, I'm guessing you can't just dodge most of the effects of an age by spending longer in one age and then sort of leapfrogging into the next one by going, you know, staying really long time in age 3 in order to dodge age 4 and then go research age 4 and 5 very quickly. That way you minimize time in age 4, something like this. The historical ages have more tame age rules that reward players for following patterns from known to history, like buildings and castles in the Age of Kings. But old history ages are where age rules are more pronounced. The age rules for the Age of Blood forces every nation to be at war with every other nation. So this is interesting. So no peace, no trade, and so, like, if you were developing your country not very militaristically, it would be catastrophic if the Age of Blood gets forced by another nation. But reduces the penalties associated while being at war. Okay, fair enough. These age rules make each age more impactful than just the technologies available. So you might want to pick an age because you can leverage the age rules in your favor, as we've kind of talked about a little bit. Okay, types of ages. If you want to diverge your timeline into an age that you like, you'll have to compete with other nations trying to do the same thing. Some ages are historically easier to reach, and others you'll sometimes accidentally slip into. Historic ages don't have any requirements, and these are just roughly speaking vanilla. Variant ages are the primary place of what-if scenarios explained, and these have special requirements to unlock them, but if you meet those by accident because of your playstyle, or you might decide to go out of your way to steer into a variant ages tend to somewhat be the equivalent of historical ages, except for their what-if scenario bends the game, making it play differently. If your nation is booming in the Age of Iron, it might be wise to push for the Age of Monuments instead of Kings, as monuments offer unique improvements that can help your regions grow. So this sounds fine and interesting and neat. Crisis ages are similar to variants. They have unique units, buildings, and other content to help you progress, but they generally come with some horrible disaster that will challenge every nation in the game. And this is a type of mechanic that I think is really interesting in games where you so often in games, everyone wants to like grow their own power, and most of the mechanics just reward you for developing yourself and this type of thing. Sometimes, or like a useful or not useful, it's very interesting to me when you get situations where you have the option to tank every player, but the idea is you tank yourself relative to other players the least. And so you have this in the instance of Crisis Ages. And so, a metagame, or like these are generally types of player actions that are less common to become meta, especially in a multiplayer environment, because everyone wants to grow as much as possible, and which makes them more interesting, and it offers a chance at new play patterns. Okay. This isn't always bad. If you're well-suited to overcome the challenge, you might want to go in the Crisis just to make other nations suffer. Exactly. Or you might want to go in the Crisis Age for a unit or tech you couldn't get otherwise. Also interesting. Another difference in Crisis Ages is that you are locked out of other age options when you meet their requirements. This is an interesting one. So you do not get to pick anymore. You have caused a crisis in your nation. You don't necessarily have to enter the crisis at that point. If you don't want to, you could instead continue to research technologies and bide your time, hoping that another nation researches a different age and sets the timeline to something else. So if you are going to be sent into this crisis age, maybe you just kind of let things go and let someone else push the age because the crisis would be particularly bad for you, and instead you just get the normal timeline, as it were. So we see this looks like maybe a crisis is happening. There's red, everything looks dark. It's the Age of Plague. Okay, so that does sound like a crisis. A plague in Nanjing. Oof. All right. Victory ages are the last type of age. They have a very high bar to meet, but if you manage it, you gain the ability to win the game. The most common victory ages are the age 10 victories. Every age 10 option is a victory age. There are also some victory ages that are available earlier, which we will call off-ramp we call internally off-ramp victory ages. These were put in place to let you end the game early, which can be a thing that's nice if you're snowballing. If you feel like you've gotten a firm lead and don't want to pass 200 more turns to see the victory screen, but be careful when entering a victory age, as these are just the specific rule set for winning. So this is pretty interesting. And so, for example, maybe it's like the Age of Culture, like comparing it to Civ 6, I anticipated something like you can choose the Age of Culture, Science, diplomacy or whatever, and then what it does is it makes it so this is the victory condition, and everyone has to shoot for that victory condition. So being able to choose the victory condition is tremendous, but it doesn't give you an automatic victory. Anyone who meets the victory conditions can win, so don't rest on your laurels just yet, but in theory you're choosing a victory condition that really favors you. All right, and then we have a list of historical ages. We're not going to go too deep into these things. The player does, or the writer does talk about how they like to play it, and we're kind of going to skim through it, but like you see this something like, I like to focus on farms and keeping needs at 200%, and we saw another dive diary where that makes your populations grow faster. We see the same thing like down here, but we do have the Age of Stone, the Age of Bronze, the Age of Iron, which is going to be, more ironous. The Age of Kings, here we do see like something about meeting faith needs can be different, and then, or let's see, I can also found religion in this age, so this is going to be, this is a statement that I thought was interesting. It's like, this is where we get religion, but tend to wait on it instead of rushing it, because meeting the faith need is a bit trickier than other needs, and not meeting the need will result in an upcoming crisis age. So I think this implies if you found a religion, you might be in trouble. But this is like a lot of the commentary here is talking about the metagame for an unreleased and unbalanced game. So I'm not sure. Well, it's talking about gameplay too, but there's not necessarily too much for us to latch onto. Age of Kings also has feudalism tech, which I tend to take first because it makes farms extremely efficient. I mean, it gives us an idea of some play patterns, and I suppose that's interesting. And chaining together mills and ovens and bake ovens mean that I have loads of free workers to work on other improvements outside of just getting your needs. We have the Renaissance Age. You get a free explorer unit. You get to do the exploration things. I tend to get the navigation tech quickly as it allows me to load up land units into deep water transports. So this is kind of stuff we've seen in other games and send them across the deep blue sea. I think I saw something else that said that like the standard is going to be like continents with like an undiscovered continent. So this will be valuable. I want to know what's going on in the other continents or islands, and I'll either join a winning battle or steal a piece of land for myself from the losing side, or I'll instigate my own conflict. And so like, okay. He's talking about the stuffs and the things. We have the Age of Enlightenment, really explode your knowledge production into high gear. He tends to play it safe because Crisis Age related to overdoing it, which this is interesting, overdoing the knowledge and causing a crisis. But to be honest, like if you're in a better position, if you overdo the education and you're in a better position to handle the crisis, you should just force the crisis every time. But this is what I was saying is like a lot of players tend to shy away from things that hurt them, but potentially hurt other players worse. And okay, spend resources to get all my regions to be powerful economic machines. We have the Age of Revolutions. Here we see talking about coal, and I'm guessing kind of this is around when industrialization happened, so really kind of doing that thing. The benefit of doing this is I can assign multiple workers to each improvement, so we start getting, building up economies of scale, various economic things. This will be shout out to Victoria 3 type age. But Revolutions is really an important inflection point in the game, but is also one of the only historical ages that comes with its own conflict built in. And so it's a semi-crisis age, I suppose. When revolutionary rebel units start spawning, I need a military prepared to fend them off, which is why it's good that I use the Age of Enlightenment to cool down my wars and bring my troops home. So this, again, this is like a metagame play pattern that we're seeing as a result of stuff we haven't been introduced into. And then we have the Age of Adam, which is going to be, space race, this type of stuff. And then the Information Age, which I thought was very interesting to read, which is once I hit the Age of Information, I start focusing on how I'm going to win. If I feel like I'm in a safe position relative to other nations, I enjoy heading into the riskiest victory age, the Age of Singularity, which I thought this age sounds cool, especially with all this AI stuff coming up. I take the information text that unlock the supercomputer improvement and build an unreasonable amount of them, or perhaps a perfectly reasonable amount of them, to summon Rogue AI Crisis and end the game in a big firework final showdown. And so I think the idea is he will be the last one standing before the Rogue AI kills everything. But that does sound like an interesting way to win the game, which is like, this is like, okay, we're kind of getting stuff that looks like normal, like 4X games, but then this seems like a sharp deviation, and we get our good old, Rogue AI. And so I thought that this was pretty interesting. Then he signs off. He says, smell you later. We'll be sure to talk more about ages again, so look forward to part 2. Thank you for bending your ears or eyes. Yep. And then we will continue on and talk about domains and culture. And domains is the thing that I thought was really interesting, because domains is what's going to give you a ton of different resource types, and is going to build and give nuance to your country more so than other stuff. And by having different resource types, generally you add depth to the game, but it's not always good that you add depth, but this sounds good, so let's kind of get into it. If you've been following Millennia for millennia, you know the theme of the design is player authorship. We're excited. What if I were there, I would have done this. To support that, you'll find less of things like predefined nations in boxes with fixed bonuses in Millennia, designs that you have to figure out how to make your character work best in history. Instead, we'll steer you more towards a system that gives players tools to define their nation over a course of time. I think that this is really interesting. To some degree, Humankind gives this, because you get to select your like nation every age or whatever, and each one will give a specific bonus over time, but this seems to do it in a little way that seems a little bit more nuanced, a little less artificial. And so domains is one of the systems that does this. There are 6 domains, and each of these gives you a resource associated with it: government, exploration, warfare, engineering, diplomacy, and the arts. At the start of the Age of Stone, government domain is active for all nations. The remaining domains become active as soon as you encounter them. For example, if you run into barbarians get in a fight, you'll open up the warfare domain. If you build a lookout tower, you will enable the exploration domain. When you encounter a tribal camp, you might find something that provides engineering, and so on. Generally, all domains are in play by the end of the Third Age, which, just to kind of provide some context, we have stone, bronze, iron. So around 2000 BCE, each domain provides your nation with the related domain powers tools that allow you to take actions involving the domain. The range involved with each is broad. The warfare domain, for example, includes domain powers that represent preparedness, stored materials, leadership training, and martial spirit, not material spirit. That sounds more engineering oriented. There's a set of standard domain powers for every domain. For example, each nation gets an exploration domain power that allows them to spawn a scout. Additional domain powers become available over time. Depending on what ages history moves through, you can end up with different domain powers. So this is like, if you get like the Age of Plagues, maybe you can spawn special doctor units, for example, with your, I don't know, diplomacy or arts domain. And you wouldn't have access to this if you didn't enter this particular age. Moving into the Age of Monuments, variant age, will grant unique domain powers you will not have access to if you proceed into the Age of Kings. Certain national spheres also unlock domain powers, so different timelines and different decisions on how to grow a nation will produce different capabilities. And so this dynamic adjustment stuff sounds really interesting. Here we can see, I think, a little bit, the resolution's not very good, but we can see this spawn scout. We can spawn prospector, claim territory, and each of these are costing some of this exploration domain juice, as it were. And this guy has, these other various domains, and he's looking to spend some of these resources here in Argos. And so, okay. Domain powers are fueled by domain XP of that type, or juice. The exploration domain power allows you to spot a scout, cost some exploration XP. XP is earned in a number of different ways, and this is the key thing, because you want to be able to make choices as to which one of these domains you are going to increase. You would not want them to all operate in parallel with zero interaction. At some point, you do want a decision point that's going to allow you to lean into one domain or another, otherwise it's not interesting. Decisions have to be about trade-offs, not like maximizing 6 parallel domain structures. You have to decide sometimes which domain you're going to lean into. And so this kind of provides that. As mentioned, you can gain some rewards from tribal camps, etc. Capital buildings also supply domain XP. Town center provides government XP. And then here we kind of have the first thing that is interesting. Barracks generates warfare XP. So if you build a barracks earlier, you're going to get more warfare XP. And if you decide to, a market square will build diplomacy XP. And so there will be an opportunity cost from building a barracks versus a market square at a particular point in the game. However, to really invest in a domain and generate substantial amounts of XP, you generally look at improvements and plan some of your economy around that direction you're interested in. If you build mines and furnaces and send ingots to a weaponsmith, the weapons there will provide warfare XP, and ostensibly you could send the ingots somewhere else. The intent of this is to allow nations to take actions that align with their strategy and character. If you build a lot of market squares and great halls and deploy to a number of envoys and set up improvements to get trade goods like tea, I will have a lot of diplomacy XP, and that will allow me to use more diplomacy domain powers. My nation will be characterized by its use of diplomatic actions, and so this is the way in which we start making our nation look unique: more truces, more trade, and alliances. If I instead build a lot of workshops, and here we're just going to get toolsmiths, engineering, this type of stuff, etc., the arrangement helps nations to be more what they do, which makes a lot of sense, just from a realism standpoint, although obviously the game's like an abstraction and not trying to be completely realistic. If a neighboring nation has been fighting since the start of the game, has barracks in every capital, extensive goods dedicated to making weapons, I can guess that they aren't going to be strong in diplomacy or arts. I can expect that their long experiences with war, their investment in training, and their weapons is going to translate into a capable opponent on the battlefield. They will be able to use a more warfare domain than a less militant nation. And so this one I found, or this kind of entire paragraph or sentence I found intriguing, because I really hope that there's kind of situations where even if you're ahead of the AI, they can fight back in certain domains because they are better in that domain. And to be fair, it's probably going to be the case that, if you pull really far ahead, you'll be farther ahead in everything. But if there are ways in which the AI can leverage its particular strength, or you can leverage your particular strength to do interesting things because you have a strong domain in a particular area, this is going to be really neat. It's like this concept in chess, which is the concept of imbalances, where, very often you'll play a classical game of chess where the position and the pawn structure looks symmetric, and generally speaking, in those types of positions, white is just better because they're a move ahead. But then you have asymmetric positions, like the Sicilian defense, where black will adopt a different pawn structure, and then doing so, okay, black is generally further behind than white because of the nature of white moving first, but black will often have some sort of compensation. White might be really stronger on the king side, and then black might be stronger than white on the queen side, even if black's position overall is worse. And so it allows you to play around imbalances and struggle for victory, even from a position where you're behind, whereas the openings that are symmetric are notoriously drawish. And so here we see the idea of you could be trying to leverage your power when you're behind overall because you're ahead in a particular domain. Okay. Domains and national spirits. To touch on a related element briefly, and this one's going to be important, national spirits are also associated with specific domains. Selecting a national spirit provides some income of their domain. Like taking an engineering domain, national spirit will provide engineering XP each turn, and these will shape your country over time. And the ideas of the national spirit have costs in their domain. Additionally, any domain powers unlocked by ideals and in a national spirit will have the cost in the same domain, and any unique improvements or capital buildings from a national spirit will often provide ways to earn more of that domain than usual. And so here we have further customization through play and emphasis, and I think that this is a lot more interesting than starting out with a nation that's going to be better at a certain thing, which is kind of like what you do with Civilization 6, for example. Instead, you play your way into particular advantages, and I like this quite a lot. Here we see national spirits, and we can only, this is an opportunity cost type thing, we can only select some of these. I don't think we get to select all of these, and so it's not just a question of sequence. It's are you going to have explorers, or are you going to have cons? Are you going to have machinery? If you have to pick 3 of these, for example, if I had to pick 3 of these just based off the name, I would probably end up picking, machinery, because we do love ourselves some economy, probably explorers, and then, maybe shogunate. Generally I'm not very warfare oriented, and so this would mean that I would have to try and play around warfare guys using diplomacy, or this type of thing, or just having a bigger economy, or exploring new lands and acquiring resources and kind of getting around it that way and stuff like this. And so this is national spirits adds further texture. And then we have culture, and then culture is a lot of fun. This is a sentence, if there ever was a sentence. I don't even know what the ellipse is about that. Why would you have an ellipse there? Sometimes culture is a lot of fun. Is this to say culture is not fun? This is such a... Okay. Anyways, mechanically, you can think of culture as a super domain. So it's your overarching domain. It's an umbrella under which all your domains kind of sit, I suppose. But thematically, culture is the force behind major events in history, big turning points. So this is your big resource, your big, nice resource. As with domains, you get culture from your actions of the game. If you construct capital buildings like Colosseum, set up goods, good lines for wine, deploy artists, or this seems like a lot of different things, but okay. Unlike other domains, there are not domain powers with a variety of costs, and you cannot choose the powers anytime you can afford them. Instead, culture you generate fills your culture meter, and when you amass enough, you can pick from any of the culture powers available to you. Okay. Culture powers are arranged by domains. When you get your first warfare XP, it opens up the warfare domain for you to, and it also makes warfare domain culture powers available. As with other domains, different culture powers. So you can use culture if you can use culture for each of your different domains, here's your choice point, where this is going to dictate what you start to develop your country to look like. It can become available to you because the age the game moves into, or because of the national spirits you adopted. No matter where they come from, all culture powers are big, nice. Founding a religion, changing your government, calling a crusade, raising armies, and advancing current research are all examples of culture power. A lot of players will have an idea of how they intend to use their culture powers as they advance through the game, but one of the places where culture powers really shine is when those players go off the rails, because culture powers are impactful than other domain powers, and because they often provide a lot of flexibility that can serve as powerful wildcards. Because if we are really developed in warfare, right, let's say, but then we could use something that's a bit more diplomacy with our culture or something like this. So I guess you could see this as giving you a lot of ability to pivot in terms of resource management. Things can get you out of a jam you didn't expect. So we see here, we see like in the exploration one, we see this Eureka, which I'm guessing is going to be tech. In the government one, we see create town, local reforms, absorb outpost, peaceful revolution. So this is to change your government type. In the military one, we see raise army. In the engineering one, we see cutting edge. We see truce in the diplomacy one, so being able to force your way out of war seems interesting. We see for arts, we see propaganda and found religion. And so these are all of the culture, powers. The arrangement for the culture system is intended to model cultural movements, things that have been a Zeitgeist as something more about the mood of a nation. You know what's a mood? The sentence that opened up this section. Culture is a lot of fun. ... Okay. At a specific point in history instead of the direct product of more tangible history. Think about historic events like the push to settle the western portion of North America in the 1800s, the increased rating after the Germanic Iron Age, or the period of rapid technological advance sparked by the invention of the printing press. This is one I think a lot. I think the printing press was just so important. So mathematics fundamentally changed when the printing press was invented to a move from a place of like geometric math where no algebraic equations were used for the most point, to an algebraic formation of math. And the big reason why is that you could put algebra in typeface, but for expressing geometric ideas this required drawing an image, and as soon as you hit the printing press, everything has to be in text. And so this caused a shift, at least in Western mathematics, because India and the Middle East were just algebraic like the whole time. But this created a shift towards more algebraic notation, which allowed for a lot of the engineering advances that followed because of how math was represented on the page, because we no longer had like the drawing of circles and using, geometric means of representation. And like this is something that's like hard to like, it's like so interesting how something like the printing press, okay, yeah, you get the proliferation of information, but you not only have the proliferation of information, you have a changing through the mode in which the information is being presented. Like the lens through which you're interpreting information changed as a result of how dissemination of information works. It's like looking through a pair of glasses that's red versus a pair of glasses that's like blue. Looking through an algebraic lens versus looking through a geometric lens allows for different sorts of maths to become prevalent, or different sorts of ideas to like bubble up and become like stuff that people are capable of thinking of, just because the printing press demonstrates math. This is too big a tangent. Let's continue. As such, a difference between how culture works and the other domains operate is that culture has a connection to the size of your nation. Smaller nations with fewer people and less distance between them have an easier time maintaining cohesion. So this sounds like a bit of a catch-up mechanic, which generally I like, but okay. Larger nations with more people at a greater distances to cover need more to stick together. They require an amount of culture to offset the size. Hence, if your nation has more regions, you'll spend more of your culture and generate on keeping them together, and you'll likely get culture powers less often. If you instead pursue more of a tall strategy, and this is an artificial like gaming distinction that's really important to people who like play strategy games, the idea of I can either go tall or wide, but if you choose a more tall strategy and have a smaller number number of units, more developed regions, you'll likely get culture powers more frequently. Okay, thanks. You're welcome. Domains and culture are two key systems in Millennia. Hopefully you can envision some of the potential they make for this interesting, a lot of interesting strategies. They really, it does sound like an interesting thing to sink the teeth into. Like it makes it seem like there's a lot of depth and like different decision points. It remains to be seen what the balance looks like, because balance can be a particular way that you only ever choose one thing, but that's a separate issue. Hopefully you can envision some of their potential. They make for a lot of interesting strategies to explore and provide Millennia with strong replay value. I mean, Millennia replay value seems on the back of like ages changing stuff, and then the ages change what like domain powers we can use and like this type of stuff. It all seems like replayability is something that they had a lot in mind. We hope you enjoyed this overview. I did, and look forward to the time soon when you can try them out for ourselves. Or yourselves. Anyways, this has been a rundown of kind of the various things, domains, culture, and also ages. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. If you have some thoughts on like what we just went through, please put them in the comments. And other than that, have a good day.